69 years ago, Buick unveiled a car that looked less like something you'd drive to the grocery store and more like a spacecraft ready for liftoff. It had a bubble canopy, jet-age fins, and even a rear-view camera in 1956. This wasn't science fiction. This was the Buick Centurion, a concept car that dared to imagine the future decades before the rest of the world caught up. Picture the mid-1950s. America was booming, highways were spreading across the nation, and the future felt limitless. Automakers weren't just selling transportation, they were selling dreams. And for Buick, that dream crystallized in 1956 with a machine that looked like it had been dropped onto Earth from another planet, the Centurion. Now here's the key. The Centurion wasn't built to roll off production lines or to park in suburban driveways. It was designed for Motorama, General Motors' traveling showcase of automotive imagination. These exhibitions were part theater, part science fair, and part magic show. Each year, GM revealed cars that defied convention, cars that whispered promises of a future yet to come. For the Centurion, Buick handed the reins to a young designer named Chuck Jordan. Jordan was only in his early 30s, but he was already making waves within GM's styling division. His task wasn't to refine an existing model. His task was to shock the world, to draw a car so advanced, so bold, that people would stop in their tracks when they saw it under the Motorama lights. The result was unlike anything Buick had ever attempted. Start with the fiberglass body, smooth, flowing, and sculpted in ways sheet metal couldn't yet allow. Fiberglass gave designers freedom to experiment with curves and proportions that traditional manufacturing would have rejected as impossible. Then came the most striking feature, the bubble canopy roof. Made from a clear, transparent material, it wrapped over the passengers like the cockpit of a fighter jet. Imagine stepping inside and looking up. No headliner, no barriers, just a panoramic dome of sky above you. This wasn't just design, it was theater. It symbolized freedom, openness, and the optimism of the jet age. But it also raised practical problems. How would anyone survive under that much glass in the hot summer sun? Air conditioning in 1956 was primitive, and tinted plastics weren't yet perfected. Still, for a show car, it didn't matter. It was meant to dazzle, not to solve every detail. Jordan also incorporated Buick's signature design cue, the sweep spear, a sweeping chrome line running along the side of the car. On the Centurion, it was exaggerated, bolder than ever, giving the car a sense of motion even when standing still. That design element proved so popular that Buick adapted toned-down versions into its real production models just a year later. But perhaps the most audacious part of the Centurion wasn't the canopy or the fiberglass. It was the decision to eliminate the rear-view mirror entirely. In its place, Buick engineers installed a small camera in the trunk and wired it to a video screen on the dashboard. In 1956! This was science fiction made real. To put it in perspective, televisions in American homes were still relatively new, bulky, and temperamental. Yet here was Buick proposing a live video feed inside your car to replace the mirror. Whether or not it functioned flawlessly in practice, the message was clear. The future of driving was technology-driven. It's worth remembering that this was the height of the jet age. Designers everywhere were pulling inspiration from rockets, aircraft, and even science fiction comics. Cars were sprouting tail fins, chrome trim that looked like afterburners, and dashboards shaped like cockpits. The Centurion took those ideas further than most dared, blending automotive luxury with aerospace fantasy. And while the Centurion wasn't intended for sale, Buick had an audience in mind. They were speaking to dreamers, technophiles, and the post-war public hungry for excitement. Motorama crowds weren't just car buyers, they were families, journalists, and industry insiders who came to see the future unveiled before their eyes. Buick wasn't competing with Ford or Chrysler at that moment. It was competing for attention, prestige, and the title of most futuristic. But behind the glamour were real challenges. Building the canopy, fitting a working video camera into a car, sculpting fiberglass on such a grand scale, these were enormous tasks in the 1950s. Some solutions were improvised. Some were simply mocked up to appear functional for the show. Yet that was the magic of Motorama. Even if the technology wasn't ready, the idea planted itself in people's minds. And that's exactly what the Centurion achieved. It wasn't just a car, it was a vision board on wheels, a promise that tomorrow's cars would be safer, sleeker, and smarter. A car that told the world, Buick is not just following trends, Buick is inventing them. If the exterior of the Buick Centurion looked like it came straight out of a science fiction magazine, the interior and engineering pushed that fantasy even further. Step inside, and you weren't just in a car. You were in a vision of tomorrow. The first thing that greeted you wasn't the usual bench seat. Instead, there were 4 individual bucket seats, front and rear, each sculpted to hold passengers securely. This was rare in the 1950s, when most cars still had wide, sofa-like benches. Even more remarkable, those seats had retractable headrests, a feature that wouldn't become mainstream until decades later. It was a glimpse of the ergonomic future. Look at the dashboard, and you'd see something almost alien for 1956. A digital-style clock and a screen wired to a rear-mounted television camera. That's right. While most drivers were still adjusting small chrome mirrors, the Centurion projected a live feed of the road behind directly to a display in the dash. This wasn't a gimmick. Buick was genuinely experimenting with the idea that cameras could outperform mirrors, anticipating a technology that wouldn't become common until the 21st century.
The steering wheel and column were equally futuristic. Instead of a bulky column running through the dashboard, the Centurion featured a floating, cantilever design that gave the driver more legroom and emphasized the idea of space and openness inside the cabin. It was both functional and theatrical, reminding drivers that they were piloting something closer to a jet than a sedan. Underneath the dramatic bodywork sat Buick's trusted hardware. Sources suggest the Centurion was powered by a 322 cubic-inch nailhead V8, producing around 325 horsepower, a serious figure for the time. Coupled with Buick's Dynaflow automatic transmission, the car promised smooth, seamless acceleration. Of course, as a concept car, real-world performance figures like 0 to 60 times or top speed were never published, but the powertrain symbolized Buick's confidence in blending futuristic design with proven muscle. Even the body construction was forward-thinking. Instead of steel, the Centurion's panels were molded from fiberglass, a material that allowed designers to shape dramatic curves and aerodynamic surfaces without the limitations of stamping presses. Fiberglass was also lighter, suggesting better performance and efficiency, although in reality, the sheer size of the Centurion meant weight savings were minimal. Still, the choice of material was a clear statement. The future of design meant experimenting beyond tradition.
Now, how did the world react when this machine rolled into the spotlight at Motorama? The reception was one of pure fascination. Crowds lined up to see the bubble canopy glisten under the show lights. Journalists marveled at the television camera, calling it a rear view of the future. The sweet spear side styling, with its bold chrome arc, drew praise for its elegance, and Buick wasted no time adopting toned-down versions of that design on production models as early as 1957. But not everyone was convinced. Some skeptics questioned the practicality of a clear canopy in summer heat. Others wondered how reliable a video camera could be in rain, snow, or darkness. Still, the Centurion wasn't built to answer those questions. It was built to provoke them. Its mission wasn't to solve every engineering detail, it was to stretch the imagination. And in that mission, it succeeded. While the Centurion never reached showrooms, it left fingerprints across Buick's lineup and across automotive design in general. The emphasis on driver-focused controls, futuristic instrumentation, and dramatic styling cues proved that Buick could innovate as boldly as Cadillac or Chevrolet. Most importantly, it left people talking. In 1956, the Centurion wasn't just a car at an auto show. It was a conversation starter about technology, about the future of driving, and about where the American automobile could go next. For many who saw it, the memory lasted a lifetime. And for us today, it stands as proof that even in the conservative 1950s, Buick dared to imagine a tomorrow far beyond the horizon. Unlike many concept cars of the 1950s, the Buick Centurion was lucky enough to survive. General Motors had a habit of destroying its dream cars once their show life ended, partly to clear space, partly to keep experimental technology from leaking into the public. But the Centurion escaped that fate. Today, the single existing example is preserved at the Sloan Museum in Flint, Michigan, where it stands as both a time capsule and a prophecy on wheels. This survival alone makes it extraordinary. Most concepts from that era exist only in photos or faded magazine clippings. The Centurion, however, still sits on its wheels, still dazzling visitors with its scarlet fiberglass body and shimmering canopy. For car enthusiasts and historians, it's not just a relic, it's a living piece of design history. Now, let's talk collectability. Technically, the Centurion has no market price. Only one was ever built, and it has never been offered for sale. Museums and heritage collections treat it as priceless. If it were to appear at auction, which is almost unthinkable, experts suggest it would rank among the most valuable concept cars in history, potentially fetching millions. But here's the truth. Its value isn't measured in dollars, it's measured in influence. Among enthusiasts, the Centurion holds a unique place. It's not remembered for performance records or racing victories, it's celebrated for foresight. That backup camera? Every new car on the road today carries the DNA of Buick's 1956 experiment. The canopy design? You can see echoes of it in modern panoramic glass roofs. Even the use of fiberglass pointed the way toward alternative materials that would later dominate sports cars and supercars. And then there's the name. In the early 1970s, Buick revived the badge Centurion for a large production model. But that car, while respectable, had nothing of the futuristic flair of the original. To collectors, when you say Buick Centurion, you mean 1956, the concept, the dream, the icon. There are curiosities that add color to the story. The Centurion's floating steering column, designed to look like it hovered in space, is one of those delightful touches that seemed like magic in the 50s. The car's dimensions were enormous, over 17 feet long, nearly 10 feet wide, more sculpture than sedan. And its bubble canopy raised practical questions that engineers couldn't yet solve. How to cool the cabin, how to manage glare, how to keep plastics from warping under heat. But these challenges didn't matter in 1956. The point was to dare. And dare it did. By the standards of its time, the Centurion was outrageous. By today's standards, it's visionary. That dual identity, both artifact and oracle, is what makes it so captivating to enthusiasts. It reminds us that the car industry isn't just about horsepower or sales figures. It's about imagination. For modern collectors who dream of owning one, the only realistic path is building a replica. Some skilled custom builders have attempted fiberglass recreations, studying photos, drawings, and museum archives to capture the essence. But even replicas face steep challenges, from fabricating the canopy to replicating the camera system. So, what's the Centurion's legacy? It belongs to the rarest category of cars, concepts that truly changed how we think about the automobile. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't practical, but it was unforgettable. And nearly 7 decades later, it still sparks conversations, still turns heads, still challenges us to imagine what's next. Because in the end, the Centurion wasn't just a show car, It was a philosophy on wheels, a reminder that daring ideas, even if they seem impossible, are what push the world forward. Every time I look at the Buick Centurion, I'm reminded that the boldest ideas are often the ones that survive in our imagination the longest. And that's what this channel is all about, keeping the spirit of classic and concept cars alive, one story at a time. If you enjoyed diving into the fascinating world of the Centurion, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications so you don't miss the next journey into automotive history. Don't forget to like this video and share it with fellow car enthusiasts. It really helps keep this community growing. And now it's your turn. What do you think of the Centurion? Was it genius or was it too far ahead of its time? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let me know which classic or concept car you'd love to see featured in a future video. Trust me, your idea might just drive our next story.